What's up, guys? Justin here with TheSketchUpEssentials.com. I'm continuing my series on architectural skills for working in SketchUp. So we've talked a little bit about terrain. We've added a barn to our model. What I wanted to do now is I wanted to start modeling out a house for this series. And so in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to continue modeling for this series. But in this case, we're going to start working on our house model. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. So if you want to learn more about architectural modeling in SketchUp, I do have a course that I've created specifically for creating architectural drawings that you can use to create plans in layout. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you check out that link in the notes down below. And so what we're going to do in this situation is we're actually going to download a model. So this is a model that's been provided by SketchUp. And what they've done is they basically provided you the outline of a building, and then you can use that in order to create a building. It's a part of a contest that they're doing on the forums. I'm a little bit behind on this, but I thought this would be kind of fun to go through and start modeling this out as if it was an actual building that we were going to create plans from. If you want to download this and follow along, and also maybe create your own house that you can enter into the contest, which doesn't really seem to have a deadline, so I think we're still good. We're still good if you want to download and enter the contest yourself. So, and the rules of the contest are you're not allowed to move the initial walls. You can add anything to the outside of it, but you can't take this and make it like 3 times the building or anything like that. So I will link to this forum post in the notes below, and let's go ahead and download this and let's get started. So to download this, we're going to go to the window, 3D Warehouse, and you can just search for Finish This House, and it should be the first option that pops up inside of SketchUp. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to download this. I'm going to load it directly into my model, and we're going to get started. And so probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this into my site model that we've looked at in the past. So we're going to set this up as if we were going to import it into our site model. And so the first thing I'm going to do, and the first thing I'm going to focus on in this video, is I'm probably just going to focus on setting this up, setting up my layers, and also getting my initial walls set up and that kind of thing. So first thing I want to do is I need to make sure that everything is tagged properly. They've actually done a pretty good job of this where you can turn the landscape on and off. I may delete this initially, but for right now you can see how what they've done is they've got your floors and ceilings already set up. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start setting up some views. So I'm going to add a view. So I'm going to go up to View, Animation. We're going to add a scene. This is going to be our overall working view. So we're just going to rename this Overall Working. And so now what we need to be able to do is, these are labeled in here as ceiling right now. I would probably put them in as roof, but this ought to work for what we're trying to do. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another view that's my working view for my first floor. So to do that, we're going to turn off our second walls, our second ceiling, and our first ceiling so that we just have our walls. And we're going to add a new view just by right-clicking up here and clicking Add. And we'll just call this L1 Working. And then we can do the same thing where we can turn off our first floor. We can turn on our second walls and probably our first ceiling, just so you have a floor right here. And we'll just call this, we'll add another view. We'll call this L2 Working. All right, we'll leave this as is for right now, but I'm going to go into my outliner real quick and I'm just going to relabel some things. So this group, for example, would be, this group, for example, would be our landscape. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm grouping these by level. So this would be level 2. And then I'm going to take these and I'm going to put them in a group. I'm going to call this level 1. So we'll have level 1, roof and walls, and level 2, roof and walls. And so I think I'm also going to come in here and I'm just going to trace out a floor real quick. And I'm just going to make that a group as well. And we'll just call this floor. And we may make some adjustments a little bit later on, but this is good enough for us to get started for right now. So we have our general grouping set up, and we have an overall working view, we have a level 1 and a level 2 view. And so one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 layers. I'm going to create a conceptual layer for level 1, and then a conceptual layer for level 2, and I'm going to put the 2 levels on those. That way I can turn off everything inside of each group really easily. So I'm just going to tag level 1 with level 1, tag level 2 with level 2. So now you can turn off everything in each one of those groups just by turning off this overall layer. And I know this first setup part is a little bit slow, but getting everything set up so you can actually work with it is going to be really important. So then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to model out a floor for level 2. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle across here, a rectangle across here, and we'll erase out this edge. I'll just double click, make this a group, and move it into level 2. So now we are about good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and let's model out some windows on this building. So basically what I want to do is I want to cut openings in these walls for some of the windows. And so my assumption is that you're going to have kind of a patio that comes around here and then kind of wraps around the corner. So we're going to want to focus on having some really big windows on this side of the building, because everything's going to kind of everything's going to kind of have a focal point looking outside these windows. I'm not going to focus too much on having like a super thought out floor plan as much as the exterior for right now, just for the sake of time. But basically what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to start cutting some openings for my windows. And so in this situation, I'm assuming that I'm going to have a door over on this side that's going to come out to kind of a patio. And then I'm going to have some kind of taller windows over here. And so the way that we're going to do that is we're going to find the midpoint of this edge right here, and we're just going to rough out our opening size. So in this situation, I'm assuming if this overall length is about 14 feet, we're just going to center this, and we're going to assume that we're going to have maybe 5 feet this way. Maybe something like 8 feet tall, or let's go with 7 feet tall. So we'll say 7 feet tall right here. And then we're going to draw a line across this face right here. And one thing you may notice about this is it's not locking very well to this wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the tape measure tool to create a guide that's going to be 7 feet high. Then I can draw along this a lot easier. And we're just going to call this 10 feet. Right here. And that's going to allow us to rough out our opening. And so you can see how, because I was inside of my walls group, this allowed me to kind of rough out this opening size. Now I can pull it back so that it'll cut a hole right here. One thing we may want to think about is my door is probably going to be about 3 foot 6 inches wide. So I'm going to draw a line. It's going to be about 3 foot 6 inches. And then this window, we're going to say it has a height of like 5 feet. So it's not going to be like full length window or anything like that. So we're just going to draw a line up right here, draw a line across right here. And then you can go ahead and erase out this guide if you want to. But I'm just going to pull this back, and that's going to be my opening for my window right here. And so we can work on modeling out the actual window itself in a minute. That's going to go in a different group, but let's do the same thing over here. So we're just going to draw a guide along this wall, same height as this window. And then we'll assume that this is going to come in off of this wall, maybe 18 inches over here, and 18 inches over here. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle on this face. Then I'll pull my opening through this wall, just like this. And then you can go ahead and delete those out or not. And then over here on this side of the wall, we're going to assume that the windows are going to go fairly full length. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our midpoint, and I'm assuming that we're going to have a wide kind of sliding door over here. So I'm going to figure that this sliding door will be maybe like 7 feet wide or something like that. So we'll do 3 foot 6 inches each way. Then we'll just draw a line up. And you'll notice how I'm using inferencing in order to do this. So I'm single clicking on this point, and then I'm holding the shift key to lock this blue inference, and I can move my mouse over this point right here in order to make that opening. So this is going to be the opening for the door itself, and then I'm assuming that we're going to have some more full height windows over here as well. So we're going to say this is going to extend another 7 feet this way, and 7 feet this way. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut the opening for this glass in here as well. So you can see how all I'm doing is I'm just cutting out the openings for my windows right now. And so now let's say that we were going to come in here and we were going to model out these windows. You can either erase these guides or not, depending on what you're trying to do. That's kind of up to you. But for me, I'm going to erase them out just to keep everything kind of clean. But now what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to model out these windows. So the first thing we want to do is we want to model these as their own group, because we might want to bring them into layout and create a different line weight for those items. And it's a lot easier if we do that by modeling them in a separate group. So first thing I'm going to do, and a lot of the time for this kind of window, I use the extension lattice maker or maybe flex tools in order to create the windows that I'm working for. For right now, we can go ahead and do something without an extension just so you can kind of see this. But make sure that you're modeling outside of the walls group, because this is going to be a windows group. Or it might be a doors group as well, depending on how you want to model this out. But for now, I'm going to rough out a door right here. And I'm just going to offset this in, maybe, we'll call it 2 inches for right now. And I'm going to push-pull my frame back by the thickness of my wall. And then you can also push-pull this face in by half the thickness of your wall. So in this case, we're going to make that 3 inches. We're going to go ahead and reverse this face. I'm just going to triple-click on this whole thing, and I'm going to make it a group. And so this group is going to be exterior door, and I like to label the sizes of these. So in this case, it's going to be exterior door, 3 foot 6 inches by 7 foot 0 inches high. And then we're going to do the same thing where we model out our window. So in this situation, for right now, and I may come back in and replace these with a flex window or something like that, but for right now, I'm just going to model this out kind of the same way, where I just, we'll go ahead and make one of these first. I'm going to use the push-pull tool in order to push-pull this back. And honestly, I don't think these need to be 6 inches thick. I think these maybe need to be like 3 inches thick. Then I'll push-pull this in by 1.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make that a group. And in this situation, you may actually want to make this a component, because you're going to make a copy of it across the way. So I'm just going to make this a component. We'll go ahead and we'll call this window. Exterior, I'm going to leave the dimensions alone for right now, and I'm going to click on create. And one thing we need to think about is right now, if we do this, if we copy this across, and again, I may swap out these windows anyway with something a little bit more detailed. If we do this right now, though, probably what would happen is you would have a single mullion in the middle here. So these are too wide. So what I'm going to do for my central mullion is I'm going to double click in here, and I'm going to push-pull this in by 1 inch. Then I'm going to take this edge, I'm just going to move it over so that it aligns with this wall. That we can go ahead and we can flip this one around. And one thing you may notice about this is right now the bounding box on this one is a little bit weird. The reason for that is because the object axis is all the way over here. And so when we try to scale it or whatever, this axis is defining the direction that goes. Well, what I would recommend in this situation is we'll go ahead and delete this out. And for this object, I'm going to add an object axis that actually aligns with the window. So you can just use the axis tool in order to do that. It's going to ask if I want to update the component axes, and I'm going to say yes. So now, when I click on this, if I was to scale it, you can see how I don't get that weird bounding box anymore. So I'm just going to use the move tool in copy mode, copy this across, and then I'm just going to use the scale tool, and I'm going to hold the control key to scale it about center, and I'm just going to flip it just like this. And so one thing we want to make sure we're doing as we do this is we want to make sure that we're grouping these and also putting them on on the appropriate layer. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm just going to select both of these and right click, and I'm going to make this a group, and we're going to call this Windows. And I'm also going to add a tag for this called Windows. And actually, to keep these organized, usually what I like to do is I like to label this with an ARCH and an underscore. That way these will group together when I sort these by name. But I'm just going to take this group, we're going to drop it on here. That way I can turn my windows on and off. And again, for the next video, I may have swapped these out with some more complex windows, but for the moment, this ought to work just fine. But let's do the same thing over here. And so in this situation, I'm going to model this window out a little bit differently because it could get to be kind of a pain copying things across and working on mullions and other things like that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to draw a rectangle across this face. I'll go ahead and reverse this face, and then we can right click on this edge to divide it. So you can see how this allows me to divide this into 3 equal segments. Then I can use that to rough out my window size. And before I do that, I'm going to use the offset tool by tapping the F key. I'm going to offset this in by 2 inches. So then I can find these points, and I can draw a line up like this. So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the move tool in copy mode to create a mullion 1 inch this way. Use the move tool again to copy this 2 inches the other way. So then I can just erase out these edges, and then I just have to push pull my frame in once. So I'm just going to push pull this in by 3 inches. And just real quick, I'll delete out these so you can see what this looks like, but I'm just going to triple click in here. I'm going to make this a group. And again, we may want to think about inside of our group, and then we can double click in here and use the rectangle tool to draw our glass. I'm just going to double click on it, and I'm going to use the move tool in copy mode in order to copy it. So again, just make sure that when you create this group, make sure that you're keeping these objects organized so that you can turn them on and off. And if you want to, as you go with these, you can add a material for your glass, just like this. So you can see how we can use this in order to quickly create our glass in here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a second way to do this if you were to use an extension. So in this situation, I'm going to use the extension Flex Tools, which I will link to in the notes down below. And so this extension basically contains a number of different dynamic doors that you can adjust. In this situation, I'm going to add a flex slider. So this is basically a sliding glass window, but we're going to make it into a door. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to start just by placing this in my model. I'm going to rotate this up like this. And then we're going to go ahead and rotate it around like this. And the cool thing about these is they're dynamic, meaning you can right click on them, and under the component options you can actually adjust how tall they are. So for example, I want my opening width on this one to, I think we said, to be 7 feet. So we're going to do 7 feet. Then we want our opening height to be 7 feet as well. So you can see how we can use this to adjust that. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to set our sill to 0, which means that it's off. So you can see how now what we have is we have basically a dynamic door in here. And we can find the middle right here. We can use this to set our door. So I'm just going to move this out so we can set this aligned with this wall. So this gives us our sliding door. So then we can come in here and we can place a flex window, which is a window that you can adjust. We'll go ahead and we'll set our sill to 0. Set our wall thickness to 6 and our inset to 0. And then we can use the scale tool in order to make this fit in our opening. And assuming I've done this right, I should be able to just use the move tool in copy mode in order to create a copy over here. And then last thing is we're just going to come in here and we're going to move those inside of our Windows layer, just like this. So now we're at a point where we've got our exterior windows here that we can turn on and off, as well as our walls. And I may come in and add some more of this off video. You don't need to see me do every single window that goes into this building. But now we have our level 1 working view with some windows on it. We have our level 2, and we have our overall view. So that's where I'm going to end this video. Leave a comment below. Let me know what else you'd like to see in this process. I'm going to go back through and I'm going to add some details and other things like that, some additional windows and that sort of thing. But then we can also start looking at our interiors in the next video. So leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought, what you'd like to see in the next video. I just love having that conversation with you guys. If you like this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new SketchUp content every week. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.